Getting started with Duplicator is pretty straightforward. From the Packages screen, you're going to want to click on the Create New button. It's in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. After clicking the Create New button, it'll take us to the Package Setup Wizard. The Package Setup Wizard consists of 3 steps: the Setup step, the Scan step, and the Build step. Let's go ahead and cover the Setup step. The Setup step has different sections that you can choose from. There's the Apply Templates, the Name, Storage, Archive, and Installer. Now, a package consists of both an archive and an installer file, and these 2 files together are what allow you to actually migrate the site. So let's go ahead and go through each one of these sections real quickly. The Apply Template section is used to store pre-configured settings from this page. So if you wanted to choose different storage sections or archive sections, you could easily set those settings and then create a template. Now, a template is typically more advanced, so in most cases most people won't use it, but if you're doing heavy workflow or trying to design different packages, templates can come in very handy. The next section is the name. So you can create a name for your package. By default, it'll just default to the date and the name of your package. The next section is the storage section. This section is designed to allow you to store your package, basically your archive and installer file, to different locations. So you can create just a default store, which means that it'll just be stored locally on this server, or you can move it up to other servers. You can use FTP, you could store it to a Dropbox location, Google Drive, and so on. So storage can be handy if you're trying to move some packages around. The next section is the archive section. The archive section consists of both a DAF or a zip style of compression. And an archive file is basically all of your WordPress files plus a copy of your database. Now, within an archive file, you have the option to create multiple filters on directories, file extensions, and files. So for example, if I wanted to exclude the uploads folder, I could add the path real quickly, and whenever I go to build this package, it will exclude this entire path. So you always want to make sure that the Enable File Filters box is checked and that you have everything set up the way that you want. Now, there's also the option to archive only the database. You can do that by clicking the Archive Only Database, and what that will do is only create a copy of the database inside of your archive file. And if you want to move just the database, that's a pretty handy feature. Just click the Archive Only Database. Now, you also have the ability to exclude certain WordPress tables. So if there are some tables that are too large or you just don't need them in the next move, you can easily select any one of these tables and it will filter out that table. So the archive section is pretty handy if you need to keep your package small, light, or you just need to customize it however you would like. The last section is the installer section. I'm not going to go into it because none of the inputs in the installer section are required. It's a more advanced feature. If you want to have pre-configured installer setup, you can use it, but for most parts you're not going to need it. So we'll go ahead and skip it for this demonstration. Now, to begin the build process, we have to run a scan first. So we'll go ahead and start the scan process by clicking the Next button. So here we are on the System Scan screen. It's the step 2 of the Package Wizard. And the scan screen is simply just a quick overview of your system. It gives some stats about what's getting ready to be archived, and it'll provide any notices for possible issues that come up. We'll go ahead and go through each of these really quickly. So in the system section, it's going to look for things like, your PHP version, your MySQL version, and if any of these are out of sync, it'll say, hey, you might want to check your PHP version, make sure that it's kosher and up to date. The next section here is the WordPress section, and it'll have different things about your WordPress version. It'll tell you if you have cached data, if it's a multi-site, if any core files are missing. So in this section, you're going to want to go ahead and probably pay attention mostly to the cache path. If you do see any cache data, it's recommended to not build a package with a bunch of cache data because you move that cached data over to another system and you may have issues. Now you can click on this little icon over here and it'll pretty much give you a full overview of everything that's been filtered and just the settings that are going in to this particular scan. The next section down here is size checks. This will show you pretty much all the files, directories, the total size of your archive, and what is getting ready to be included. Now, by default, if the package size is over 350 megabytes, then it will show a warning here. It'll say notice. And you can still continue to build your package. It shouldn't be a problem. With Pro, it does significantly better than the Lite version currently at working with the larger package files. However, it is recommended if you don't need some of the files to just go ahead and filter them out. And you can easily do that by clicking any of the, if you wanted to just do a single file, you could easily do that by clicking the file. Or if you have an entire directory of data that you don't want anymore, you can click that, click the add filter and rescan. Basically is what it'll do is it'll run a rescan, and then it will show you, your size went from 300 down to 69 megs. So it's recommended to only really build what you need and move only what you need. The next section here is for add-on sites. So say you had multiple subsites in a site, it'll detect that. Name checks will look for various invalid characters that could possibly have issues. If you're running like a new PHP 7, in most cases, you're not going to have issues with this. But some of the older PHP versions, if you have Unicode characters, it will show you these. And then if you have troubles with your scan or your build, you can easily filter these out by clicking the checkbox next to that particular file or folder. The last one is for read checks. In some cases, you might have some symbolic links or specific WordPress files that are just unreadable. And it's just pretty much telling you, hey, PHP doesn't have the ability to write these files, so there's read issues. So in this particular case, it's just kind of alerting you to those particular issues. In most cases, all this should show green. If you do have a red notice, it's okay. It's basically just there as a notice to show you that there could possibly be some issues. Now, the last section here is the database overview. It's going to show you the size of your database, basically how many tables are in there, and give you kind of a detail of all the different tables that you have in here. So that pretty much goes over the scan process. And then once you're done with the scan, you're going to want to go ahead and start the build process and then continue from here. Once the build process starts, you'll see a progress indicator showing the overall state of the package. Now, this progress meter is going to really determine the performance of your host and the overall size of your package. So once the package is complete, you'll see it here in the packages screen. Now there's various information on the package screen that we'll go through real quickly. First of all, you're going to see a type. Now if you built the package manually, then it'll say manual. However, if it's built with a scheduled, then it'll see scheduled. You'll also see the date the package was created, its size, and its name. Now over here on the right hand side is the ability to download the various package files. Right now you can download the installer or the archive file, or if you want to download both simultaneously, you can click the both files, and this will open up two dialog prompts where you can save both of these files out to your local computer. Now the last option over here is a drop down that you can see the details of the package file, or you can jump to a transfer screen which will allow you to transfer the package files up to another storage location. Or if you originally created the package with a storage type such as Dropbox or Google Drive, then you can click this and it'll open up a dialog showing the location of the Dropbox or the Google Drive package where it was stored. So once you've created your package, you're going to want to go ahead and move that package from one server to the other. And in this case, we're going to be moving from Snap Creek Test 2 over to Snap Creek Test 3. And there are three simple ways you can move these files. The first is FTP. You can use a client like FileZilla to move the files. The second one would be to use the built-in transfer option within the plugin. And the third is to use a control panel file system where you can move those files. In this video, we're just going to go over the last two really quickly. So the first option is to transfer this package to another location. So what you'll want to do is click on the transfer menu option, and this will take you to the transfer screen. Now, if you don't have a storage location already set up, you can click this create new storage. And in this case, we created an FTP site where we already have all of our FTP credentials set up to another server. So in this case, all we would do is we would check this box, the location where we want to transfer. We click the Start Transfer button and it would move this particular package, both the installer and the archive file, over to our location. Now this is a pretty simple option because you can do it directly in the plugin. However, if you don't want to do it in the plugin, you can also do it manually. So if we go back to the packages screen earlier, you'll recall that we clicked on the download button and it had an option for us to download both the installer and the archive file. We downloaded both of those to our hard drive, which I'll show you right here. So I have both the installer and the archive file on my local computer. Now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and move these files up using the cPanel option. So what you'll want to do is you'll want to log into your cPanel and go to your file manager. And in this case, I'm at a location of public HTML/demo, which is the site that I want to upload to. We're going to click on the upload folder button. This will open up a new dialog, and then you can choose to upload both the installer, which will upload, and then you can also choose to upload the archive file. And we'll upload both of those, and you can see both of those are starting. And you'll just come back to your file manager screen and you'll click reload, and you may have to wait a little bit of while for the archive file since it's large, just depending on the performance of your host. But you just keep clicking reload until both of these files are shown. And once they're both uploaded and they're finally complete, then you can browse out to the installer.php file and start the migration process at the new server, which we'll go to in a bit. But one thing you want to keep in mind is that you don't want to browse out to the installer until the archive file is completely uploaded. So whether you're doing it through the plugin or through a control panel, you want to make sure that the archive file is completely uploaded. Okay, so now that we have our installer and our archive file on the new Snap Creek Test 3 web server that we just recently uploaded, we're going to go ahead and run through the various steps of the installer. Now, to get to the installer, you simply browse out to it in your browser. So you're going to open up a web browser, and in your address bar, you'll type installer.php. Now, when you initially type this and hit enter, you'll notice that it's going to generate a whole new URL. This is because the installer is extracting itself. It's a small little bootstrap program that we have that will extract itself onto the server and begin the install process. Now up here in the right hand corner there's some links. There's an info link which will give you information about the current server that you're on. If you want details of every single field, there's a full-blown help system in here, so clicking on the help link will open up that file and show you pretty much every setting there is. Now within this archive section you'll see information about the name, the size, the location of the archive file. Validation is simply a section that will run a series of tests on your servers to make sure that it's ready for an install. Requirements must pass, notices are optional. So if you happen to get a red down here, in most cases you'll just kind of want to open up the section, read about what it says, and see if you want to take any actions on those. So if it is red, you can still continue. If it's red for requirements, you'll have to fix that issue. The last section down here is the options section. 95% of most cases you won't need to mess with any of this, but if you do, there are some options in here for setting up and running the installer. So once you get all your options set, you're going to want to click the terms and conditions, and then you'll click the next button, and this will begin the extraction process. Once the extraction process is complete, you'll see step 2. Now the extraction process can be fairly quick if you have a really performant host and you have a small package, but if you're working with a larger package, it may take some time, so you'll have to be patient as that process is extracting. So once everything's extracted, you'll see step 2, which is installing the database. Now there's a couple different options when installing the database. There's the basic option and there is the cPanel option. Now the cPanel option allows you to log into any cPanel type system with your cPanel username and password and create everything directly from this installer interface. So you don't need to log into any other interface. You can pretty much do everything right here. So we'll cover this in another video. For this video, we're going to go ahead and do it the old-fashioned way, which is the basic way. And in this pattern, you'll need to go to your control panel. So we're going to jump over back to our control panel. We'll go to the home on our control panel here. And most control panels look very similar. So you'll want to scroll down here to the MySQL databases and click on this. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a database. We're going to call the database demo. So you'll want to look for this create database option. You're going to create the database. You'll go back. You'll see our database has been created right here. It's completely empty, so there's no data in it. But we need to assign a user to this database. So we're going to create a user called udemo. We'll give it a password. We're going to go ahead and create the user here by clicking the create button. We'll go back. Now, right now you see that this database is created, but there's no user assigned to it. So we need to assign this user to the database. So come down here to the bottom and it says add a user to the database. We're going to add this udemo user to the Snap Creek demo database. So click add here. And on this option, you're going to want to check all privileges. Now we'll go back. And you can see here that this Snap Creek udemo user is now assigned to this database because you need this user in order to log into the database. So now we have a complete blank database set up ready for our installer to use. So now we're going to jump back to the installer interface and we are going to choose the action to connect and remove all data. Even though we're not removing any data, we're basically just connecting to an empty database. So we need to grab these credentials. So we're going to call this is remember the name of our database was Snap Creek Demo. Our user was Snap Creek udemo. And what we're going to want to do is come down here to the test database option. We'll click this. Now what this does is it runs through and it makes sure that the credentials that you just entered will allow you to create the database and that everything is set up correctly. Now there are some other options in here. Most of these, like 95% of the time, you won't need these. So in some cases you will. If you do, you can come in here and use these. There's a help icon that will show you everything you need to know about all these options. But in most cases you won't need these, so you can keep that closed. Now the validation section here is similar to the first step, and it has a series of tests that that need to pass. So it'll just run through each one of these, make sure that each one is set up correctly. And just like our tests were on the first screen, notices are not required, but requirements are required. So in most cases, if you see a red on the notice, you can try to continue, but it's best to open up the section, find out what the issue is, and then continue on. So once we get green on everything, we're going to go ahead and click the next button. And what this will do is this will prompt us to make sure this is what we're getting ready to do, because if you're getting ready to connect to a database that has data in it, then it's going to wipe everything out in that database. So it's pretty much saying, hey, are you sure these settings are right? Because you're going to overwrite a database. In this case, we don't have any data. We just created a brand new one. So we're going to click OK. And that begins the installation process for the database. Once the database has been installed, you'll be ready for step 3. In most cases, you won't need to edit any of the settings on this page, but we'll go through each one of them real quickly. The first section here is the replace section. Now this is designed for additional URLs. So if the new URL that you're updating to needs to have additional URL replacements, this is a great place to do this. You want to use caution when using this because it's a global search and replace. So if you replace the word test and that word test is also in a URL, then you can cause problems. So you want to use caution when using this. Check out the help for this and it'll give you a little bit more details. The last section down here is various advanced options. The first one is you can add a new admin account. So if you're moving a site and you don't even remember what the login was, you can easily add a quick administrator account on the fly. Some of these other features you really won't need to touch very much. Like I said, in 99% of most cases you won't really need these. There is the old URL, which is the one that you're getting ready to replace. There's also the ability to check specific tables. So there might be a table that you didn't want to actually update. And the last section down here is activated plugins. So there might be some plugins that you don't want to activate because they're causing troubles at install time. So you can deactivate it here and then at install time run the installer get it all through, and then you can go back into your plugins and reactivate it later. So like I said, in most cases, you're not going to need any of these options, but they are there. And that's pretty much a quick wrap up of step 3. So we're going to go ahead and continue on to step 4. So once you've arrived at step 4, your site should be completely installed. The only last thing that we're going to do here is we're going to log into our website and finalize the setup. But before we do that, we're going to show you a little information here about the last step here. So you can click on the Show Report button, and it will break down pretty much everything that happened with the install process. You can, if you do have any errors in here, you can click on each one of these sections and it'll go into detail about what some of those issues could have been and some recommendations for fixes. There's also an installer log, which is available through the entire install process up over here on the right, called installerlog.txt. You can click on this file and it will give you a full synopsis of the install process. Now, if you're pretty confident with your install and you do this quite a bit, we recommend leaving this checkbox checked, and what it will do is it'll automatically delete the install files once you've logged into your site. So if you don't want those automatically deleted because you're trying to do, maybe you're running into an issue with some install or something, you want to leave the archive and the installer file there, then just uncheck that box. So we're going to go ahead and log into the back end here and complete our installation. And this process will take us to our admin login. We're going to go ahead and log in here. And as you can see, the site has been fully migrated. You'll get a message here saying, you know, your site has been fully migrated. Now, remember, we didn't check that checkbox, so we still want to remove these installation files. So just to kind of recap all of this, I'm going to jump back out here to Snap Creek Test 2, where we originally built this entire site, and just log into the front end real quick. And you can see here real quick that, you know, this is what the front end looks like. And now we'll jump back to the Snap Creek Test 3, and we'll go ahead and open up the front end here, and you can see that the site has been pretty much fully duplicated. So in order to finalize this entire process, we want to always make sure to remove the installation files. You don't want to leave those on your server because it can pose a security issue. So you'll definitely want to remove these, and you can do that by clicking the Remove Installation Files. This will go through and run through all of the installation files and remove them. And if for some reason one of them wasn't able to remove, you'll need to log into your host and make sure that those are removed. But for most parts, this should wrap up a full standard install of using WordPress Duplicator Pro. So to go ahead and wrap up our session here, I just wanted to let you know that if you go out to the main website, you can find quite a bit of information about the plugin. There's some really important sections here under Duplicator Pro. One of the first ones here is the Quickstart. This is pretty much a step-by-step guide for getting started on some of the most common tasks. Basically, there's a step-by-step on what we just went through on how to, you know, migrate your whole site, and different sections for some of the most common asked questions. You can also check out our FAQ, which is a searchable FAQ that pretty much has almost every common asked question that comes across our help desk. So a lot of your questions can easily be answered right here on the FAQ. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video. If you want to go ahead and visit us on Facebook, you can do that quickly through the links up here at the top. Please like and subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. And until the next video, have a great day.